The research station on Kepler 442b hummed with nervous energy as Dr. Sarah Chen watched the transport ship descend through the amber sky. She pressed her face against the reinforced glass of the observation deck, her breath fogging the surface as she counted the seconds until touchdown. "They're really bringing a child here?" asked Commander Vex, the lead Zephyrian officer stationed at the Joint Research Facility. His four arms crossed in what humans had learned meant deep concern among his people. The blue-skinned alien's large black eyes reflected the worry that his translator couldn't quite capture in his mechanical voice. Sarah nodded, unable to hide her own anxiety. "Tommy Chen Williams. He's my nephew. 7 years old." She turned to face the gathered alien researchers who had crowded into the observation deck. Representatives from 6 different species stood watching the human transport with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright alarm. "Dr. Chen," spoke Korthax, the insectoid delegate from the Hive collective, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "We must express our concern about bringing a juvenile human to this facility. Our research here involves the most dangerous predator species from across the galaxy." "I understand your concerns," Sarah replied, straightening her lab coat. "But Tommy's parents died in the mining accident on Europa Station. I'm his only living relative, and the Federation doesn't allow children in long-term foster care on deep space assignments. He has to stay with me." The transport ship touched down with a gentle thud that vibrated through the station's hull. Through the thick atmosphere of Kepler 442b, Sarah could make out the small figure of her nephew through the ship's windows. He was pressing his own face against the glass, just like she had been doing moments before. Even from this distance, she could see his wide eyes taking in the alien landscape around them. "The boy will be confined to the residential quarters," declared Zix, the crystalline being whose species communicated through harmonic frequencies that the translation devices converted to speech. "Under no circumstances should a human child be exposed to the specimens we're studying here." Sarah wanted to argue, but she knew they were right. The Galactic Research Consortium had established this station specifically to study the most lethal predators from known worlds. The facility housed creatures that could kill a grown adult of any species in seconds. Having a curious 7-year-old anywhere near the research labs would be asking for disaster. The airlock hissed as the transport's boarding tunnel connected to the station. Sarah hurried down to the docking bay, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and dread. She hadn't seen Tommy since he was 4 years old, when she'd left Earth to join the consortium. Now she would be responsible for raising him in one of the most dangerous research facilities in known space. The inner airlock door slid open, and Tommy stepped out wearing a child-sized pressure suit. His sandy brown hair was messy from the helmet, and his green eyes immediately began scanning everything around him with the fearless curiosity that seemed universal to human children. Behind him walked Lieutenant Morrison, the human security officer who had escorted him from Earth. "Aunt Sarah!" Tommy rushed forward and wrapped his arms around her waist, his small voice muffled by the embrace. "This place is so cool! Are those real aliens? Why does that one have so many arms? Can I pet the crystal person?" "Slow down, buddy," Sarah laughed, kneeling to his eye level. "There are a lot of new things here, but you need to remember the rules we talked about on the video calls. This is a research station and some areas are off limits." Tommy nodded seriously, but his attention was already wandering to the assembled alien researchers who had followed Sarah to the docking bay. His complete lack of fear impressed even Sarah. Most adult humans needed time to adjust to being around so many different alien species, but Tommy looked like he was at a zoo, eager to learn about every new creature he saw. "Dr. Chen," Lieutenant Morrison handed her a data pad. "Tommy's medical records, educational materials, and personal belongings. He's been briefed on basic station safety protocols, though you'll need to reinforce them. He's a bright kid, but he's still 7. "I understand. Thank you for bringing him safely." As Morrison departed on the return transport, Sarah led Tommy toward the residential section. The alien researchers dispersed back to their work, but she could feel their concerned gazes following the small human child. She understood their worry. Children of most species were carefully protected and rarely exposed to any danger until they reached maturity. The human practice of allowing children to explore and take small risks was something many aliens found disturbing. "Can I see the research labs?" Tommy asked as they walked through the corridor, lined with viewing windows that looked out over the alien landscape. "Lieutenant Morrison told me you study dangerous animals from space. That sounds awesome." "Maybe someday, when you're older," Sarah replied, using the standard adult deflection. "For now, you'll be staying in our quarters. I've set up some educational programs for you, and there's a virtual reality system where you can explore Earth environments." Tommy's face fell slightly, but he didn't argue. He was unusually well-behaved for a 7-year-old, a trait that Sarah suspected had developed after losing his parents. Children who experienced trauma early often became more serious, more eager to please the adults they depended on. Their quarters consisted of 3 connected rooms: Sarah's bedroom and office, a common living area, and a smaller room that had been quickly converted into a child's bedroom. Tommy's eyes lit up when he saw the space-themed decorations Sarah had ordered and the collection of toys and books waiting for him. "This is great, Aunt Sarah. Can I see outside my window?" The residential quarters had external viewing ports, unlike the laboratory sections, which were kept sealed for security. Tommy pressed his face against the transparent aluminum and gazed out at the alien world below them. The research station was built on a floating platform that hovered 3,000 meters above Kepler 442b's surface, providing a perfect view of the planet's unique ecosystem. "Look at those trees!" Tommy pointed at the massive fungal growths that dominated the landscape. "They're purple and orange. And what are those flying things?" Sarah joined him at the window, following his pointing finger to where a flock of native creatures soared between the fungal towers. "Those are called wind dancers. They're actually more like jellyfish than birds, but they've evolved to live in the atmosphere instead of water." For the next hour, Sarah showed Tommy around their quarters and explained the basic rules of life on the station. No leaving the residential area without an adult escort. No touching any control panels or doors marked with warning symbols. No wandering off, especially at night when the reduced staff might not notice him missing immediately. Tommy listened carefully to each rule, asking intelligent questions that showed he understood the seriousness of the situation. But Sarah could also see the adventurous spark in his eyes, the same curiosity that had driven her to become a xenobiologist. She made a mental note to keep him busy with educational activities to prevent boredom from leading to trouble. That evening, as they shared dinner in the station's common mess hall, Tommy experienced his first real interaction with the alien research team. The dining area was designed to accommodate the various dietary needs and physical requirements of different species, with sections for different atmospheric compositions and gravity levels. "The small human is remarkably calm," observed Dr. Phyllis, an amphibian-like researcher from the Aquatic Collective. Her translation device gave her voice a gurgling quality that fascinated Tommy. "Can you breathe underwater?" he asked, leaning forward with interest. "I can indeed, young human. My homeworld is entirely aquatic." "Do humans not possess such abilities?" "Nope, but we can learn to swim really well. My friend Jake could hold his breath for almost 2 whole minutes." Tommy took a bite of his synthesized chicken and continued chattering about swimming, completely unaware that the gathered aliens were exchanging meaningful looks. "The child shows no fear response to our presence," Korthax observed in a low voice to Commander Vex. "This is highly unusual behavior for most species when encountering unfamiliar aliens." "Humans are known for their adaptability," Vex replied, though his forearms remained crossed in a gesture of continued concern. "Perhaps this extends to their juveniles as well." As the days passed, Tommy settled into a routine of online education, virtual reality exploration, and supervised time in the common areas of the station. Sarah was amazed at how quickly he adapted to life surrounded by aliens. He learned to recognize each species by their unique characteristics and even picked up a few words in the various alien languages. But she could also see that he was growing restless. 7-year-old humans were meant to run and explore and take small risks as they learned about the world. Keeping him confined to the safe areas of the station was necessary, but it went against every instinct of childhood development. The problem came to a head 2 weeks after Tommy's arrival. Sarah was deep in analysis of tissue samples from a Rigelian shadow cat when her communicator buzzed with an emergency alert. Dr. Chen to residential level 7 immediately. We have a situation with your nephew. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She dropped her sample slides and ran for the lift, her mind racing through every possible disaster scenario. The residential level was supposed to be completely safe. What could have gone wrong? She found Commander Vex and Security Officer Briggs standing outside the observation deck, their expressions grim. "Where is he?" Sarah demanded. "He's safe," Vex assured her quickly. "But we found him in Section C7. He somehow got past 3 security doors and was attempting to access the restricted laboratory levels." Sarah's relief that Tommy was unharmed quickly turned to anger and frustration. "Tommy!" she called as Briggs led the boy out of the observation deck. "What were you thinking? You could have been killed." Tommy's face was flushed with excitement rather than shame. "Aunt Sarah, I saw something amazing. There's this huge wolf-like creature in the lower lab, and it looks so sad. I think it's lonely. Can I go back and—" "Absolutely not." Sarah's voice was sharper than she intended. "Tommy, this isn't a game. The creatures here could kill you before I could even reach you. Do you understand that?" For the first time since arriving on the station, Tommy's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to see. I wasn't going to touch anything, I promise." Sarah knelt down and pulled him into a hug, her anger dissolving into worry. "I know you're curious, buddy, but some things are too dangerous, even just to look at. These aren't Earth animals. They're predators from worlds where everything has evolved to be deadly." But even as she held him, Sarah could see that her words weren't really reaching him. Tommy had inherited the human trait that had both blessed and cursed their species throughout history, the inability to accept that anything was truly impossible or forbidden. It was the same drive that had led humans to climb mountains, explore oceans, and eventually reach for the stars. And now, it might get her nephew killed. That night after Tommy had gone to bed, Sarah called an emergency meeting with the research team leadership. She had to find a solution before her nephew's curiosity led him into a situation that his 7-year-old judgment couldn't handle. "The child must be removed from the station," Korthax declared immediately. "His behavior poses a security risk to the entire facility." "There's nowhere else for him to go," Sarah replied tiredly. "And legally, I can't just abandon him. There has to be another solution." Commander Vex shifted uncomfortably. "Dr. Chen, with respect, most species keep their young in secure environments until they reach the age of wisdom. Human children are unusually independent." "That's exactly the problem," Sarah said. "You can't contain human curiosity with rules and barriers. The more you try to stop a human child from exploring, the more determined they become to find a way. It's how we've survived and spread across the galaxy." "Then what do you propose?" asked Dr. Phyllis. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing her next words would probably end her career. "I think we should show him the labs, under strict supervision, with proper safety protocols. Give him what he wants in a controlled way so he won't try to find it himself." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Zix's harmonic voice broke through the quiet. "You wish to expose a human child to creatures that could kill him instantly? This suggestion approaches criminal negligence." "I'm talking about very limited, very careful exposure," Sarah insisted. Maximum security, multiple barriers between him and any danger, but if we don't give him something, he's going to keep trying to get past our security, and eventually he's going to succeed when no one's watching. The debate continued for hours, with most of the alien researchers strongly opposed to Sarah's proposal. But as the discussion wore on, a few voices began to support the idea. The human child has already demonstrated he can bypass our security measures, Vex pointed out. Perhaps Dr. Chen is correct that controlled exposure is safer than continued attempts at containment. There is also scientific merit to studying human juvenile behavior in the presence of apex predators, added Dr. Phyllis thoughtfully. No research has been conducted on this topic. Finally, after much discussion and debate, they reached a compromise. Tommy would be allowed one supervised visit to the observation areas of the lower laboratories. Multiple safety protocols would be in place, and any sign of danger would result in immediate termination of the visit. The morning of Tommy's supervised laboratory visit dawned with an unusual calmness that made Sarah even more nervous than she already was. She had barely slept, running through every possible scenario in her mind, from simple accidents to catastrophic containment failures. "You remember all the rules?" she asked Tommy for the 5th time as they prepared to leave their quarters. "Stay next to you at all times. Don't touch anything. Don't make sudden movements. And if anyone says run, I run," Tommy recited dutifully. He was practically vibrating with excitement, his green eyes bright with anticipation. "Are we really going to see the space wolf?" "It's called a Fenris beast," Sarah corrected automatically. "And we're just observing from a safe distance through reinforced barriers. This isn't a petting zoo, Tommy." The research team had spent most of the night preparing for this visit. Additional security protocols had been activated, backup containment systems tested, and emergency evacuation routes planned. Commander Vex had even stationed extra security personnel throughout the laboratory levels, though he'd made it clear he thought this was a terrible idea. Dr. Chen. Korthax approached them in the corridor outside the laboratory levels, his mandibles clicking nervously. "We have established a viewing corridor with triple redundant barriers. The specimen will not be able to detect the child's presence." "Good," Sarah replied, though her stomach was still churning with anxiety. "Tommy, this is Dr. Korthax from the Hive Collective. He's one of our best xenobiologists." Tommy looked up at the towering insectoid alien with fascination rather than fear. "Hi, Dr. Korthax. Do you really live in a hive like Earth bees? Can you fly with those wing things?" Korthax's compound eyes focused on the small human with something approaching amazement. "I do indeed live in a collective society, though we no longer require flight for survival. You show no fear of my appearance, young human." "Why would I be scared? You're just different, not dangerous. Aunt Sarah taught me that different doesn't mean bad." The simple statement seemed to impact every alien in the corridor. Sarah noticed the quick exchanges of glances between the research team members, but she was too focused on keeping Tommy safe to analyze their reactions. They entered the main laboratory complex through a series of airlocks and security checkpoints. Tommy's eyes grew wide as he took in the massive facility that stretched out below them. The laboratories were built in a series of descending levels, with the most dangerous specimens housed in the deepest sections. "Whoa," Tommy breathed, pressing his face against the observation window. "This place is huge. How many different animals do you have here?" "Currently, we're housing specimens from 47 different worlds," Dr. Phyllis answered, her amphibian features showing what Sarah had learned was amusement. "Each level contains increasingly dangerous predators with specialized containment for their unique abilities." They moved through the facility slowly, with Tommy asking endless questions about every creature they observed. The alien researchers found themselves drawn into detailed explanations of hunting behaviors, evolutionary adaptations, and ecological relationships. Despite their initial concerns, Several of them seemed genuinely impressed by Tommy's intelligent questions and quick understanding of complex concepts. Human children possess remarkable cognitive development, Zix observed to Sarah as Tommy peppered Dr. Phyllis with questions about the aquatic predators in the Level 3 tanks. Most juvenile species cannot comprehend such complex biological relationships. Humans start learning through exploration from the moment they're born, Sarah replied, watching her nephew with a mixture of pride and worry. It's probably why we ended up as an interstellar species, despite coming from a relatively dangerous world. They descended deeper into the facility, past creatures that could crush steel with their jaws, dissolve matter with acid, or kill with psychic attacks. Tommy observed each one with scientific curiosity, taking detailed mental notes and asking follow-up questions that showed he was truly understanding the explanations. Finally, they reached Level 7, where the Fenris beast was housed. This specimen was captured from Ragnarok Prime, Commander Vex explained as they approached the observation area. It represents the apex predator from one of the most hostile worlds ever discovered. The creature is approximately 3 meters long, possesses retractable claws capable of cutting through battle armor, and has venom glands that produce a neurotoxin deadly to most known species. Sarah felt Tommy tense with excitement beside her. Through the reinforced viewing window, they could see into a large containment cell that had been designed to replicate the rocky, wind-swept environment of Ragnarok Prime. At first, the cell appeared empty. "Where is it?" Tommy whispered, his nose pressed against the transparent aluminum. "Fenris beasts are ambush predators," Dr. Phyllis explained. "It's likely camouflaged among the rocks, waiting for prey to reveal itself." As if responding to her words, something moved in the shadows of the artificial cave system. Tommy gasped as the creature emerged into view, and Sarah had to admit it was an impressive sight. The Fenris beast looked like a wolf that had been designed by someone's nightmares. Its fur was a deep black that seemed to absorb light, and its eyes glowed with an eerie blue phosphorescence. Muscles rippled under its coat as it moved with predatory grace, and when it opened its mouth to test the air, they could see fangs as long as Tommy's fingers. But what struck Sarah most was the creature's obvious intelligence. Unlike the more primitive predators on the upper levels, the Fenris beast's eyes showed clear awareness and problem-solving capability. It had been studying its environment, learning the patterns of its captors, waiting for an opportunity. "It's beautiful," Tommy whispered, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat at the wonder in his voice. "Look how smart it is. It knows we're watching." Indeed, the Fenris beast had oriented itself toward the observation window and was studying them with obvious interest. Its glowing eyes moved from alien to alien before settling on Tommy. For a moment, predator and child stared at each other through the barrier, and Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The specimen has never shown this level of interest in observers before, Korthax noted, his scientific curiosity overriding his nervousness. It typically ignores external stimuli unless it perceives a direct threat. "Maybe it can smell him," Tommy suggested. "Dogs and wolves on Earth have really good noses. Can it smell through the barriers?" "The containment is completely sealed," Vex assured them. "No molecules can pass between—" He was interrupted by a low, haunting howl that resonated through the observation area despite the sound-dampening systems. The Fenris beast had raised its head and was calling out, its voice carrying notes of loneliness and isolation that seemed to reach something deep in Tommy's chest. "It's sad," Tommy said quietly. "It misses its pack." "Fenris beasts are typically solitary hunters," Dr. Phyllis corrected. "They don't form pack structures like Earth wolves." "Then it misses its home," Tommy replied with the simple certainty of a child. "Everything misses home when it's locked up." The research team exchanged glances, Tommy's observation was uncomfortably close to thoughts that many of them had been trying to avoid. The creatures in their facility were not just specimens to be studied. They were living beings removed from their natural environments and confined for scientific purposes. "The research we conduct here saves countless lives," Zix said, though the harmonic frequencies of his voice carried a defensive tone. "Understanding these predators helps protect colonies and trading routes." "I know," Tommy said, still watching the Fenris beast. "But that doesn't mean it can't be sad, too." The creature approached the observation window, moving with careful, deliberate steps. When it reached the barrier, it sat back on its haunches and continued to stare directly at Tommy. The glowing eyes seemed to be trying to communicate something, and Tommy pressed both hands against the window as if he could reach through to touch the alien predator. "Tommy, step back from the window," Sarah said nervously. "It's okay, Aunt Sarah. It just wants to understand me, like I want to understand it." The Fenris beast tilted its head, mimicking a gesture that was startlingly similar to Earth dogs. Then it did something that made every alarm in the facility start screaming. A section of the containment wall simply vanished. Not destroyed, not broken open. Vanished, as if it had never existed. The Fenris beast stood in an opening that led directly into the observation corridor, where Tommy and the research team were standing. "Containment breach!" Vex shouted, his forearms reaching for weapons that were designed to stop creatures much smaller than a Fenris beast. "Emergency protocols activated!" The corridor erupted into chaos as emergency lights bathed everything in red and blast doors began slamming shut to isolate the breach. But the doors were designed to contain escaping specimens, not protect observers who were already in the danger zone. "Everybody down!" Sarah screamed, pushing Tommy behind her as the research team scattered for emergency shelters that were still 30 seconds away from sealing. The Fenris beast stepped through the opening with casual grace, its glowing eyes surveying the panicking aliens with what looked almost like amusement. It could have killed any of them in seconds. Its speed and strength far exceeded anything the emergency protocols were designed to handle. Instead, it ignored the adults entirely and focused on Tommy. The boy had not followed his aunt's instructions to get down. Instead, he stood frozen in place, staring at the creature that was now less than 3 meters away from him. The Fenris beast approached slowly, its massive head lowered to Tommy's eye level. "Tommy, don't move," Sarah whispered from where she crouched behind an overturned table. "Don't even breathe." But Tommy wasn't frozen with fear. As the deadly predator came closer, his face showed the same wonder and curiosity it had displayed all morning. When the Fenris beast stopped directly in front of him, close enough that its breath ruffled his hair, Tommy smiled. "Hi," he said softly. "You're even more beautiful up close." The research team watched in horror as the creature that could have torn the boy apart in seconds instead lowered its massive head until its nose was almost touching Tommy's face. The glowing blue eyes closed as the Fenris beast inhaled deeply, learning Tommy's scent. "Nobody move," Commander Vex whispered into his communicator. "Do not activate any weapon systems. The slightest aggressive action could trigger an attack response." Tommy slowly raised his small hand and placed it on the creature's massive snout. The Fenris beast's eyes opened, focusing on the boy's face with an intelligence that was both ancient and alien. "You're not really a monster, are you?" Tommy said quietly. "You're just scared and lonely, like I was after Mommy and Daddy died." What happened next would be talked about in xenobiological circles for generations. The boy leaned forward and gently kissed the nose of the deadliest predator in known space. The Fenris beast's reaction was immediate and completely unexpected. Instead of attacking, the massive creature made a sound that was part purr, part whimper, a vocalization that none of the researchers had ever heard before. It nuzzled against Tommy's face with a gentleness that seemed impossible for such a lethal predator. Impossible, Korthax whispered, his mandibles clicking rapidly with shock. Fenris beasts are incapable of forming emotional bonds. They kill everything they encounter. Apparently not everything, Dr. Phyllis observed, her amphibian features showing amazement. The child has somehow triggered a completely unknown behavioral response. Tommy giggled as the creature's massive tongue licked his cheek with surprising delicacy. He likes me. See? I told you he was just lonely. Sarah wanted to rush forward and pull her nephew to safety, but she could see that any sudden movement might break whatever spell had prevented the Fenris beast from attacking. Instead, she watched in amazement as her 7-year-old nephew continued to pet and talk to the creature that should have killed him instantly. "What's his name?" Tommy asked, looking back at the research team. "Specimen designation F7, Vex replied automatically. "That's not a name, that's a number. He needs a real name." Tommy considered for a moment, then smiled. "I'll call him Shadow, because he's black like shadows but really gentle inside." The newly christened Shadow seemed to approve of this designation, making another soft vocalization and settling down on the floor next to Tommy. The boy immediately began scratching behind the creature's ears, causing its tail to wag in a manner startlingly similar to Earth dogs. "Dr. Chen," Zix's harmonic voice carried notes of awe. "Your species continues to surprise us. The child has done something that should be scientifically impossible." "How did he know?" Sarah asked, still not moving from her position behind the table. "How could he tell that the creature wouldn't hurt him?" "Maybe it's because I'm little," Tommy suggested, still petting Shadow's massive head. "Mommy always said that kids can see things grown-ups miss because we don't have all the rules in our heads yet." The observation was more profound than Tommy realized. Every adult in the corridor had approached the Fenris beast with preconceptions based on its classification as a deadly predator. They had seen it as a dangerous specimen to be contained and studied, never as a living being capable of loneliness or connection. Tommy had seen past the creature's fearsome appearance to recognize something that resonated with his own recent experiences of loss and isolation. In doing so, he had discovered a behavioral characteristic that had never been observed or documented. The barrier dissolution, Korthax realized suddenly. Fenris beasts are known to possess limited reality manipulation abilities, but we thought they only used them for hunting. "It didn't break out," Dr. Phyllis agreed. "It chose to remove the barrier. But why?" Tommy looked up from where he was now sitting next to Shadow, leaning against the creature's warm flank. "He wanted to meet me properly. You can't really be friends through a wall." The simple statement carried implications that made every researcher in the corridor reconsider everything they thought they knew about interspecies communication. The Fenris beast hadn't escaped. It had initiated first contact. Over the next hour, as emergency teams secured the area and additional safety measures were put in place, the research team observed interactions between Tommy and Shadow that defied every known principle of xenobiology. The deadly predator showed patience, gentleness, and what could only be described as affection for the human child. But perhaps most importantly, Tommy's fearless acceptance of the alien creature had revealed that even the most dangerous species in the galaxy were capable of connection and friendship. It was a discovery that would change humanity's relationship with the wider galactic community forever. As Sarah finally felt safe enough to approach her nephew and his unlikely new friend, she realized that Tommy had accomplished something that all the scientific instruments and research protocols in the facility had failed to achieve. He had seen past the surface to recognize the living being underneath. The emergency meeting in the station's main conference room had been going on for 6 hours, and tensions were running higher than the station's orbit. Representatives from 12 different species had arrived via emergency transport, along with officials from the Galactic Research Consortium and what appeared to be half the diplomatic corps from Earth. Sarah sat at the far end of the table, exhaustion weighing down her shoulders as she listened to the heated debate surrounding her nephew's actions. Tommy himself was back in their quarters under protective custody, happily drawing pictures of Shadow while completely unaware that his simple act of kindness had triggered a galactic incident. The child's actions represent a fundamental breach of established xenobiological protocols, declared Ambassador Thex from the Rigelian Senate, his scaled features showing deep disapproval. Unsupervised contact with an apex predator could have resulted in catastrophic loss of life. But it didn't, argued Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human xenopsychologist who had arrived on the fastest diplomatic transport from Earth. Instead, it revealed behavioral characteristics that challenge everything we thought we knew about Fenris beast psychology. This represents the greatest breakthrough in predator research in over a century. Sarah watched the debate with growing frustration. For 6 hours, the assembled officials had discussed Tommy's actions as if he were a laboratory specimen himself, analyzing every aspect of the encounter while completely missing the point that had been obvious to a 7-year-old child. "If I may interrupt," Sarah said, standing up despite protocol that required her to remain seated as the subject of inquiry. "You're all missing the fundamental truth that my nephew discovered." The room fell silent. Ambassador Chen, Earth's senior representative to the Galactic Council, gave Sarah a warning look. Speaking out of turn during a formal inquiry could result in diplomatic consequences, but Sarah was past caring about her career. "Tommy didn't approach that creature as a researcher or a scientist. He approached it as one living being recognizing another. He saw past our classifications and categories to understand something we've forgotten in all our protocols and procedures." "Dr. Chen," Commander Vex spoke carefully, "while we appreciate your nephew's unique perspective, the fact remains that his actions violated every established safety protocol. The creature could have killed him instantly." "But it didn't," Sarah repeated Dr. Vasquez's words. "And the reason it didn't is because Tommy offered it something that none of us thought to provide: simple acceptance and companionship." Dr. Wren, the lead xenobiologist from the consortium, leaned forward with interest. "Explain." Sarah activated the holographic display and showed the surveillance footage from the encounter. The assembled officials watched in silence as Tommy approached the Fenris beast without fear, spoke to it with genuine kindness, and ultimately kissed its nose in a gesture of pure affection. "Look at the creature's body language," Sarah pointed out. "From the moment it stepped through that barrier, it showed no aggressive posturing. Its approach was curious, not predatory. It was investigating Tommy, not hunting him." "The child displayed no fear response," observed Dr. Keithis, the insectoid behavioral specialist. "Most juveniles of any species would have triggered fight-or-flight responses in both themselves and the predator. Instead, both species remained calm." "Because Tommy didn't see a monster," Sarah explained. "He saw a lonely, intelligent being that had been isolated from everything familiar. He responded with empathy instead of fear, and that made all the difference." The debate continued, but Sarah could see that her words were having an impact. Several of the younger researchers were nodding in agreement, while the older, more established scientists struggled with concepts that challenged decades of accepted wisdom. The turning point came when Dr. Phyllis activated her communicator and spoke to someone off-screen. After a brief conversation, she looked up at the assembled group with obvious excitement. "I've just received reports from our colleagues who have remained in the laboratory. The Fenris beast, Shadow, as the child named it, has been exhibiting completely unprecedented behavior since the encounter." She activated another holographic display, showing real-time footage from the containment area. Shadow was no longer pacing restlessly or showing signs of captivity stress. Instead, the massive predator was lying calmly in its enclosure, occasionally vocalizing in patterns that the translation computers were identifying as possible communication attempts. "It's been trying to communicate?" Ambassador Chen asked, leaning forward with interest. The vocalizations match linguistic patterns from several known languages, Dr. Phyllis confirmed. It appears to be attempting to establish ongoing contact with the research team. This is completely unprecedented in our experience with this species. There's more, Commander Vex added, his forearms showing the relaxed posture that indicated growing acceptance. We've run comprehensive scans on the child. There are no signs of psychic influence, chemical alteration, or any other external factors that might explain his behavior. His actions appear to have been entirely voluntary and based on emotional response. Dr. Wren stood up, his expression showing the kind of excitement that came with paradigm-shifting discoveries. If these observations are accurate, we need to completely redefine our understanding of predator psychology and interspecies communication protocols. What are you suggesting? Asked Ambassador Thex, though his disapproving expression was beginning to soften with curiosity. I'm suggesting that we've been approaching apex predators from the wrong direction entirely. We've focused on containing and studying them as dangerous specimens, never considering that they might be capable of forming social bonds across species barriers. The implications hung in the air like an electrical charge. If the Fenris beast could form an emotional connection with a human child, what did that mean for humanity's relationship with other species previously classified as too dangerous for contact? Dr. Vasquez pulled up additional data on her display. We've been reviewing similar incidents from Earth's history. Human children have shown remarkable ability to form connections with dangerous predators in Earth's ecosystem. Wolves, big cats, even apex marine predators. There are documented cases of children being accepted by wild animal groups that would kill adult humans on sight. You're suggesting this is a species-wide trait? Dr. Keithais asked. I'm suggesting that human juveniles may possess a natural ability to recognize and connect with other intelligence, regardless of species or apparent danger level. Their lack of preconceived notions about what should be feared may actually make them ideal first-contact specialists. The room erupted in discussion as the assembled representatives grappled with concepts that could revolutionize interspecies relations. Sarah found herself at the center of attention as experts from across the galaxy peppered her with questions about human child development, emotional responses, and social behavior. But through it all, she kept thinking about Tommy's simple observation. You can't really be friends through a wall. The breakthrough came when Dr. Wren suggested a controlled experiment. With proper safety measures in place, they would allow Tommy to interact with Shadow again, this time with full documentation and analysis of the communication patterns that emerged. Absolutely not, Sarah said immediately. I won't let my nephew become a test subject. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Chen spoke gently, consider the implications. If Tommy can establish communication with other apex predators, we could prevent countless conflicts between human colonies and dangerous species. We could move from a model of containment and destruction to one of coexistence and mutual understanding. Sarah looked around the room at the assembled representatives. For the first time since the inquiry began, she saw hope instead of fear in their expressions. The possibility that humanity might offer something unique to the galactic community, a natural ability to bridge the gap between species, had transformed the discussion from punishment to opportunity. If I agree, Sarah said carefully, it would be on my terms. Tommy's safety comes first, always, and he gets to choose whether he wants to participate. He's been through enough trauma for one lifetime. Of course, Dr. Wren agreed immediately. The child's welfare is paramount. But if he's willing, and if we can develop proper protocols, this could be the beginning of a new era of interspecies cooperation. When they finally returned to their quarters, Sarah found Tommy exactly where she'd left him, sitting on the floor with papers scattered around him, drawing detailed pictures of his encounter with Shadow. His artistic skills were limited by his age, but the emotions he'd captured in his crayon drawings were unmistakable. "How's the meeting going?" Tommy asked without looking up from his artwork. "Are they mad that I made friends with Shadow?" "Some of them were," Sarah admitted, sitting down next to him on the floor. "But I think they're starting to understand that you did something special." Tommy held up his latest drawing, which showed himself and Shadow sitting together under what appeared to be stars. "I dreamed about him last night. I think he's lonely because he can't go home. Do you think we could help him find his family?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. In all the scientific analysis and diplomatic discussions, no one had considered the most obvious solution from a child's perspective, reuniting Shadow with his own kind instead of keeping him as a permanent research specimen. "I don't know, buddy, but maybe that's something we should think about. The other researchers want to study him because he's dangerous," Tommy said with the matter-of-fact wisdom that sometimes emerged from young children. "But maybe he's only dangerous because he's scared and doesn't understand what people want from him." Sarah realized that her 7-year-old nephew had identified the fundamental flaw in the galaxy's approach to dangerous species. By treating them as threats to be contained rather than beings to be understood, they had created the very conflicts they were trying to prevent. "Tommy, some of the scientists want to do more research on how you and Shadow became friends. Would you be interested in helping them if we can make sure it's safe?" Tommy's eyes lit up. "Could I see him again? I think he liked me, but I want to make sure he's okay." "Maybe. But first, you need to understand how important this is. What you did has never happened before. You might be able to help other people make friends with creatures they thought were monsters." Tommy considered this seriously. Like when the aliens were scared of humans at first, but then they found out we were friendly? Exactly like that. But Tommy, this would be different from our regular life here. There would be lots of tests and observations and people studying everything you do. Are you sure you'd want that?" Tommy nodded without hesitation. "If it helps Shadow and other creatures like him, then yes, I want to help." Over the following weeks, a careful protocol was established for renewed contact between Tommy and Shadow. The observation sessions revealed communication patterns that revolutionized xenobiological understanding. Shadow demonstrated problem-solving abilities that suggested intelligence comparable to any spacefaring species, and his emotional responses to Tommy's presence proved that Fenris beasts were capable of complex social bonds. But the most significant discovery came when Tommy suggested they try to contact other Fenris beasts in Shadow's home system. Using recordings of Shadow's vocalizations as a communication template, the research team successfully established first contact with a Fenris beast pack on Ragnarok Prime. The response from Shadow's family was immediate and dramatic. They had been searching for their missing pack member and were willing to engage in peaceful communication to secure his return. Within months, a historic agreement was reached that established Ragnarok Prime as a protected world with limited scientific exchange rather than a source for specimen collection. Shadow returned home to his pack, but not before teaching the research team communication protocols that opened dialogue with dozens of previously hostile species. The Tommy Protocol, as it became known throughout the galaxy, revolutionized first contact procedures and led to peaceful relations with worlds that had been written off as too dangerous for interaction. Tommy himself became something of a galactic celebrity, though Sarah was careful to limit his exposure to maintain as normal a childhood as possible. He continued living on the research station, now serving as a consultant on interspecies communication, while still attending his regular education programs. But perhaps the most meaningful change was the shift in how the galaxy viewed humanity. Instead of being seen as just another emerging species, humans were recognized for their unique ability to bridge differences and find common ground with even the most unlikely allies. As Sarah watched her nephew play with a holographic projection that Shadow had sent from Ragnarok Prime, a recording of the Fenris Beast Pack welcoming their returned family member, she reflected on how a simple act of childhood kindness had changed everything. Tommy had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology or weapons or political influence. It was the ability to see past surface differences and recognize the fundamental connections that linked all intelligent life. In doing so, he had shown the galaxy something uniquely human: the courage to offer friendship to the unknown, and the wisdom to believe that love was stronger than fear. The research station continued its work, but now it operated under new principles. Instead of studying dangerous creatures in isolation, they worked to understand them within their natural contexts and to facilitate communication rather than containment. And whenever they encountered a particularly challenging species, the first question asked was always the same: what would Tommy do? The answer had never failed them yet. It was, she thought, with a mixture of pride and terror, the most human thing imaginable. As Sarah returned to her quarters that night, she hoped she was making the right decision. But she also knew that trying to cage human curiosity was like trying to hold back the tide. Better to channel it safely than to let it break free on its own. She had no idea that tomorrow's carefully planned visit would result in an event that would change how the entire galaxy viewed humanity.